Welcome to the Doug and Kamish Show, Week 6 review. Kamish, it's good to have you back. After your twisting, do you want to elaborate on this at all?
I prefer not to, but I'm glad to be back.
Okay, well, good. Well, we're glad to have you back. And first game we're going to review is the Finest Bean versus Toilet Town. And Finest Bean, just people aren't scoring. There's just no way around it. There's some controversy on whether he should have started Greg Jennings or not. In the end, actually, there was a point adjustment. I don't know if you noticed this. DJ's team actually went from 99 to 92 points, whereas it would have made a difference had he played Greg Jennings.
Ouch. I didn't notice that, but like I said before in consoling the Doug, is you can't really hurt and be so angry at yourself for the Greg Jennings thing when he hasn't done anything in 2 years. He finally does. You can't kill yourself over it. But you can kill Floyd, and you can kill your other receivers that didn't do crap outside of Andre Johnson.
And Floyd's going to be out with a hamstring injury, and Chris Cooley went out with a concussion. So all around a bad day for the Bean. Toilet Town, Calvin Johnson comes up huge, and people didn't think he was going to play.
That was unbelievable. Can't say enough good things about the Calvin. As a Loin fan and as a fantasy football fan, that was a great performance by the Johnson.
Krabs shows up. Gets a touchdown, and that's 2 weeks in a row for Krabs.
Niners said they're going to start opening up the offense. Looks like they're being truthful.
Toilet Town goes to 3-3. Bean falls to 3-3. Next up, Soldiers versus the Nips, and Nips is becoming quite the upset specialist here.
He is a giant killer. Took out number 1 in Lombardi last week, and then took out the number 1 in the Knoll this week.
Yeah, so he's just picking them off. And, really with him, what helped is a Soldier using Mike Thomas over Dwayne Bowe, which he got killed for.
That's two times now. The first time was Jacoby Jones.
Yep.
He thought was a good play over Bowe, and Bowe had a good 20-some points. And now he does it again this week. Eventually, just like it took him about 12 weeks to figure out Favre blows, he's going to figure out Dwayne Bowe can make big plays.
Okay, you also got on Nips. He has Breeze and Lance Moore. Lance Moore is one of those risk. I mean, it's all or nothing.
He's a Bowe.
And it's just basically what happens. But he got help from Brandon Jacobs, a Brandon Jacobs sighting with 2 touchdowns.
They were courtesy touchdowns when they were playing the Loins.
Courtesy touchdowns or touchdowns?
Hey, Chris Johnson got the biggest courtesy touchdown in the history of fantasy.
And we'll get to that.
So Jacobs gets a couple. Touchdown's a touchdown.
There you go. Soldiers goes to 4-2, and Nips goes to 3-3. Sass loses to Doe, but my biggest question is, where is he?
As the commish, I've fielded thousands of emails and phone calls.
We've even had tweets on it.
And tweets.
It's
tweets on where the Hawk is trash. No. Where the Hawk is Sass. And
you got confused. That's okay.
I don't have that answer. I put people on it. I've contacted wildlife preserves. I've contacted numerous fish and game people. And the Sass is gone. I don't know where the Sass is at.
Now, the National Enquirer did have a sighting, but that was all the way in New Mexico. So it's kind of weird that Sass would be down in New Mexico. It's a little warm down there for him.
Yeah, he's awfully furry to be in the heat.
We're still checking.
We're
checking on the validity of that story. Regardless, Gore shows up, but that's about it for the Sass. For Doughboy, Flacco and Rice had a good day, and Collie had a decent day, but he's in danger right now. The whole Clark being hurt for the rest of the year, probably out for the rest of the year. At least that's the rumors that are going around. After he just made that trade, we'll get to that when we get to the previews. But nonetheless, Doughboy goes to 2-4, and Sass falls to 2-4. Going to the new guy and White Trash, and new guy lost barely to White Trash, who didn't even fill out his roster. But let's go with new guy first. He's rolling thick with the Steelers. Big Ben, Mike Wallace, Heath Miller, and all of those had a decent day.
I mean, you can't argue too much with that. It's tough to judge the NG because he inherited such a bad roster. He got off to actually a good start considering what's going on there, but his team's just not good.
Yeah.
You can't kill the guy for it. He was left with not a whole lot to play around with.
White Trash does not start a tight end, and actually it was okay for him. Ryan Terrain comes up big, and so does Deshaun Jackson before he gets nearly decapitated.
I don't care what happens if he won or if he lost. The fact that he didn't fill out a roster, I mean,
Yeah.
there's no good words that we can put on air to describe not filling out a roster, not being smart enough to fill out, to pick up a tight end at the proper time.
I mean, as a founder, you would think that he would be right on top of that because he would know the rules of the game. Or am I reading too much into that?
Doug, you're not reading enough. There's deep, big problems that we just don't have enough time to get into.
Mm-hmm.
Filling out the roster is just an end result of those deep-rooted problems.
So now becomes one of those situations where he can never make fun of anyone for ever not filling out his roster, i.e. Jim.
He can't. He is not allowed to make fun of Jim or anybody else that doesn't fill out a roster because he's set the standard.
There we go. Anyway, both moved to 3-3. Paper and Jockeys. Now, Paper was going to try to be am I correct on this? The first team in the GFO history to go undefeated. Am I correct on this?
Yes, I
The whole way
believe
through?
Roper in 06 went 7, 8, 9-0,
Yeah.
something like that. He was off to a smoking hot start. In typical Lombardi fashion, got smoked out of the playoffs early, but he was the furthest undefeated.
Well, Paper was going to try it, and he gets upset, which I don't think he was expecting from Jockeys as far as the upset. Hakeem Nicks was probably one of the biggest zeros for him, and that's a surprise because he's been great all year.
Against the Loins.
Exactly. But he didn't get much, and Randy Moss only got him 5.
Yeah.
So that kind of accompanied a little bit of that. But Jockeys Schaub finally showed up, and that's basically what he needed. And you had Hines Ward and Roy Williams both have decent days.
Roy Williams is comeback player of the year material.
Yeah.
And everybody mocked the Roper for inserting him in the lineup. And even Roper was like, hey, guys, easy. It's just a fill-in.
Mm-hmm.
But, hey,
he might not be a fill-in anymore.
A solid third receiver right now.
So the Jockeys goes to 3-3, and Paper falls to 5-1. And then the biggest game of the night came down to really, in essence, the last play. Nappy headed foe versus Trash Talk. Nappy falls to 1-5, and truthfully, it looks like Nappy's a decent 1-5 team. Unfortunately, it's just he's not getting the right plays at the right time. Mendenhall had a great day, but Maurice Jones-Drew looked horrible. And truthfully, Chris Johnson, until the last 3 or 4 minutes, looked just as bad.
He was bottled up. Didn't break tackles like he usually does. It's like something's missing. Some kind of burst is missing. I don't know exactly what it is, but thank goodness for ESPN and forced timeouts.
Exactly.
And Fisher, for some reason, allowing him to continue to play on a 4th and 5.
Well, Rivers didn't look that great.
No.
And he only had like 6 points. Pierre Garcon had a great day. And did you see the catch, the one-handed catch that he made? There might not be a finer catch in football.
No, it was one of the best catches I've ever witnessed.
Yeah, and just held it in. But anyway, Trash Talk, it comes down to, as you were saying, Fisher more or less running up the score. I was listening to an interview today, and they were talking about how the Jacksonville Jaguars coach, whose name is escaping me at this present moment, Jack Del Rio, kept calling timeouts, and Fisher said, keep calling timeouts, I'm going to keep running Johnson out there. But for a while there, we had a Javon Ringer sighting. Did that get you worried?
No, it excites me. I mean, anything to lift the spirits of DJ up, I'm all for it. There's not a lot positive going on in his life. If Ringer brings him a touch of joy, I'm all for it.
Now, let me ask you this. What was your reaction? Were you watching the game, or were you just thinking it was over? Be honest.
No, I watched every last second thinking all I need is a touchdown run here and I win. In fact, I get upset when the Titans move within the 40-yard line because I think that the Johnson can break a big one at any moment. Yeah. I get upset when they're inside the 40.
Well, regardless, Chris Johnson scores at the end, and Mike Tirico said it best. He said, millions of fantasy games were decided with that one play, and it was very interesting that the GFO was one affected with such a play.
Real quickly, as the commissioner of this league, I would like to apologize to the midget TSA worker. We do send our regards as the GFO for Nappy's girl punch.
Awful really actions. Anyway, that's a Week 6 review. We'll be right back with a word from our sponsor, Retirement Resources, and we'll be back with our Week 7 preview.